a way to sum up the collective experience is the gratitude that I have, not just for Bruce, I mean, I know it's a little hackneyed now after Springsteen and I came out years ago, and the last segment of that short piece is people saying, thank you, Bruce, from all over the world. So the gratitude I have for him. I used to send him a Christmas card, actually, so I guess I can add that. I had my two girls sitting on the hood of a Dodge drinking warm, it was really apple cider. In a soft summer rain, I sprayed the hose over the picture, or
Welcome back to the second part of my talk with Joni. We go into her experiences in shows. We talk a little more of Bruce's legacy. And of course, she answers the Mary question. Here you go. Absolutely.
You said book signing. It reminded me that my birthday was last weekend. And back in the days when we were a little more liberal with don't get in trouble, having our cell phones on while we're teaching, phone rang, and sometimes my friend Brian would annoy me and call me, and I would tell him 2:00, you can't call till after 2. So I was ready to tell him, call me after 2, and he said, don't hang up, because he knew I was going to. He was at Danny Federici's book signing up in North Jersey, and it must have been 2003, because I was going to the show the next day. And he said, somebody wants to talk to you. And Danny gets on the phone and says, hey, here you're going to our show tomorrow night. Anything you want me to play and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, The Wish, because I've never heard it live and I still haven't. And it's a great Christmas song and whatever. But yeah.
Well, Broadway, you got to hear it.
I did. And I was at Light of Day. Yeah, okay. I did on Broadway. I'm just saying. And I was at Light of Day, and I couldn't tell you what year.
Yeah.
And it was, at least 15 years ago. It was 81 degrees. It was November 1st, and it was 81 degrees, and at Stone Pony, and they lifted the walls were doors. And I was just on the outside because it was cooler. And I don't even remember who was on the stage, but I saw heads starting to turn, and I turn around, and here come the Goombas walking in front of Bruce. So as he's walking by, I said, oh, go for it. I squeezed his bicep. I figured they throw me out, it'll be worth it.
Right.
And I pulled out my phone and I called Jeff in Chicago, and all I said was, I touched him. And he said, where are you? Like he knew who him was.
Yes, immediately, right. Yes.
Immediately.
That's funny.
I didn't get thrown out.
That's good.
It was worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories about that is I worked with a guy and a couple of years ago. So I guess this have been maybe 2018, maybe 2019. You might know, but he comes to me and he says, Jesse, I've got to tell you a story. I'm like, okay, what's going on? He said, 4th of July weekend, we had spent the whole day and we were exhausted. And we had tickets to see Southside that night. And we went, do we want to go? And we're like, no, I'm really tired. Yeah, me too. And to be honest, Southside's voice is a little weak lately. Yeah. It's honestly, we could just open wine and sit here. Okay, yeah, let's do it. So Bruce shows up that night, right? And the next day, his friends are calling him, where were you? What was going on? He's like, I missed it, Jesse. Just because we were too lazy. I said, you never know. You never know.
Oh, that's painful.
Yes.
Yeah. The pop-ups are part of the richness of being a Bruce fan too.
Yes.
Went to Ringo Starr's All-Star Band many years ago, and Clarence was playing with him, and Levon Helm was drumming. Yeah. And Bruce came out and did Long Tall Sally. I was with my oldest nephew Jason, and it was like an oh my God movement. It's at the old Garden State Arts Center
Yes.
on the opera out on the turnpike, as Bruce labeled it. Yeah.
Well, I know, and what's funny, right, is my very first show, Don Henley at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I think still lives in Dallas, but I knew he lived in Dallas then. And
Uh-huh.
so he just showed up
Oh.
and they did I Fought the Law together.
Oh, what a great song for the
Yeah.
two of them
Yeah,
too.
just it was great, right? So a few years later, I had driven to Nashville
Mm-hmm.
during the tour, the High Hopes section of the tour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's Nashville,
Yeah.
right? Someone's got to, right? Like
You would
getting there,
think.
and
All
they didn't,
musicians live there. Yeah.
and they didn't, and I was slightly disappointed. I mean, you can't be
Yeah.
disappointed in a Bruce show, but I was like,
I know.
really? There's no one in town that that's good.
Have you ever
Um,
seen Joe Bruschecki pop on stage
no,
with
I have
him?
not. No,
Yeah, well,
no.
maybe because Pittsburgh's not that far from here. I
Yeah.
also was at Vote for Change in '04.
Oh, very
That
cool.
Bruce was part of. Yeah, it was. I mean, Michael
Hmm.
Stipe was sitting right by us, and Eddie Vedder, and of course Bruce. Is
Yeah.
great stuff. Not a great result that year, but
No, but yeah. Um, so you've seen a lot of shows, but
Mhm.
are there still songs you're chasing? Like it sounds like you'd love to hear the whole band do "Wish," the
I'd like
"Wish."
to hear the Wish. I think it's
Yeah,
probably, and every time I go, I
yeah.
want to hear Backstreets because I taught my kids when they were little that that's the greatest song ever written. Which
What about Backstreets for you? Why?
um, I don't know.
Okay.
I love the way that the band comes in slowly.
Hmm.
I love the passion of the song, but you could say that about Jungle Land for sure. I mean,
Sure.
there are other songs that have that element of passion. But the lyrics, Jeff and I have always honed in on the, Forever Friends.
Yeah.
But the song just tells such a great story with such passion and
Hmm.
commitment. I remember rereading the Rolling Stone review
Hmm.
of the album and the criticism of the 39 times hiding on the back streets,
Yeah.
which is, part of what's classic. But I found that I'm not alone, that many people, it's another rich part about being a Bruce fan is the language we use.
Right.
You tell me you went to a show, you say, what did you get?
Yes.
I got
Yeah.
incident. I
Yeah.
got, right? It just, that makes no sense grammatically, but it's how we characterize it. So getting back streets, like anytime I've heard it,
Hmm.
I just look skyward is probably the last time I'll ever hear it. I did hear it in Philly at the show that I told you with the draw from
Yeah.
my JS 2012. In fact, that show was funny because I was on the screen because I was so close to the stage, and at the end of the show, I'm getting a text saying, "Can you give me a ride home? I see you're here. I saw you on the screen."
Oh, that is
The
greatness.
person who took me was, my friend Marcia, and her friend ditched her and went home.
Hmm.
Her name's Sandy, of all people, right?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, and she said, "Can I have a ride home? I saw you on the Jumbotron."
That is great.
It is funny. Oh, it's just such a great community. I mean, what Bruce has brought me is such amazing people in my life that aren't just people I know. They are people that matter to me almost as much as family. And,
When when 3 years ago,
mhm.
um, this March will be 4 years, but um, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, and the amount of outpouring and love from the audience of my show and the fans it was just unbelievable. You
Well,
know,
yeah, I told Jeff I was a little nervous tonight. He said, "It's a friend you haven't met yet."
yes,
Yeah.
it that truly is, and
Mhm.
I Joni, it happens all the time. People will go, "Oh, I'm nervous, Jesse. I can't be on. I can't be on a radio show," and I'm like, "Just we'll talk."
Uh-huh.
And usually, people end up forgetting that we're being recorded because it's just two
Oh,
people. And I tell this to people. I go, my goal is to not sound professional, to not sound polished. I want the feeling that you are eavesdropping on two people in front of you in line when you're queuing for the pit.
Or you're
Yeah,
GA and you're
yeah,
inside and you're waiting 3 hours for the show to start.
right. Yeah,
And
you
those
want that.
conversations.
Yes.
So,
The other thing, my other passion is the British show Doctor Who.
okay.
And I just had a musician, we did an interview with her, and you talk about what you get, right?
Mhm.
Um, in Doctor Who, it's who's your doctor? And my doctor is not my
Uh,
favorite Star Trek captain
uh-huh,
is Captain Kirk. My
uh-huh.
favorite, Tom Cruise role is this.
Uh-huh.
It's who is your doctor, and it's
Right.
my doctor is. There's
Right.
a
They're
very
all
personal
yours.
thing to
You
it,
own them.
yeah,
Right.
and
That's
um,
sweet.
and the amount of people who are fans I have to explain set lusting Bruce to is minuscule. They immediately get it. Oh, absolutely. Non-fans, I go through, I said, well, a few things you got to know. One, Bruce's set list, while sometimes the same, often changes. Even maybe the same songs that they do in different orders. Okay.
Right.
Two, a lot of fans go and on social media, they post the set list as it's happening. Okay, that
Right.
makes sense. And three, other fans follow that social media. And if he does a song that he doesn't normally do, or when you're going, you're not set listing, you're set lusting. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yes. And that's true. And it is funny. Um, by far, some people will say, yeah, I've gone to enough shows that I'm not really, there's songs I'd like to hear again, but there's things, and the 2016 River Tour
Mm-hmm.
punched a lot of people's bingo cards
Mm-hmm.
because if doing the whole river,
Mm-hmm. Double
there,
album.
yeah, that was a lot of like, oh, I was wanting, Drive All Night, or I was wanting Stolen Car, or I was
Mm-hmm.
wanting, and
Maybe
now
get
you're,
all of it.
yeah, exactly.
Jesse, it's interesting you mentioned set list because made me remember another story. My brother-in-law Jimmy was the head usher at the Meadowlands,
Okay.
indoors and outdoors. And on occasion he could hook me up. There was one night, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. I was on the stadium on the ground in GA seats, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He knew where I was, and he said, "Follow me." And I was like, "No, I was pretty good. I was like maybe 20th row. I'm fine. No, I'm good. I'm good." He goes, "Come with me." And I said, "I don't want to leave these seats." And he said, "Just trust me." And he handed us off to somebody else. I was with a then friend, and it was front center. Bruce was singing Sunny Day, never forget the song. And I remember Bruce looking down at us as he came toward the front when he would sing that song. He'd come down to the lower part of the stage, like, who the heck is that, tall blonde and the short brunette? Because I found out Pat Riley was in those seats from the Knicks the night before, and those were
Yes.
celebrity seats. And when my brother-in-law Jimmy saw that the seats were unoccupied, 45 minutes into the show, he came and got his sister-in-law to hook
That's
her up.
nice.
But much earlier than that, years ago, before the computers, one time he tapped me on the shoulder and he handed me a rolled piece of paper. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I didn't even look at it. And so then that's a set list. And he said, aren't you going to look at it? And I said, no, you don't want to know what's coming next. But the first time he gave me set list was many years ago. He came to the beach. He handed me a whole bunch. He said, I got set lists for you. And I didn't want to break his heart and say I could print them off the internet.
Right.
People publish them after the show.
Yeah.
No, he had, as an usher, Bruce would write out the set lists and by hand that you've seen them, and they give them to the ushers. So Jimmy he came and he gave me
Oh,
them,
nice.
handing them up the stairs. I looked down and I said, you didn't tell me they were in his handwriting.
Yes.
He said, how do you know it's his handwriting? Yeah, people like
I know.
us.
Come
duh.
on. Yeah. Duh. Yeah.
I've got about 20 of them framed.
Oh, that's cool.
Various places, but I remember the time he said, aren't you going to look at it? No, I want to be the couple of surprises that you get.
Yes.
I wanted them. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Besides Backstreets, are there other songs that mean a lot to you or maybe your family?
Well, wedding song. You want to guess what it was? So it's probably the most common Bruce wedding song.
So If I Fall Behind?
Exactly.
Yes.
Love the Tunnel album. Love
Yeah.
Tunnel. Love Magic. Love, love, love. I would have to say there's an awful lot on the new album.
Yeah.
A Letter to You. I actually listened to it when I was decorating
Hmm.
for Christmas, and I was alone in the house a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And even though you hear the lyrics and you understand them, I really got the elegy to the one
Yes.
foot here, knowing that I'm not far from the next world, and
Yeah.
you get to an age, and talking to his friends, seeing them further on down the road,
Yes.
and made me very emotional. Missing my parents, but
Yes.
emotional. And I put it on again, and I got emotional all throughout the album. I was alone in the house, but it was a good feeling to be emotional and to have
So,
somebody
yeah.
understand the things that I don't want to talk about or think about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Once again, thank you, Bruce.
Yeah. A few years ago, one of our oldest friends died unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me to speak, one of the speakers at the funeral, and I quoted Land of Hope and Dreams. And then when my father died, I quoted Land of Hope and Dreams and made the joke, it seems like I should quote Johnny Cash, but I'm going to quote. Um, and I've often joked that one day, I hope in the future, my son will quote Land of Hope and Dreams at my funeral.
Mm.
Um, when he closes the song that he closes the album with, Now I'll See You in My Dreams, may have moved me out of and okay, Better Days, Land of Hope and Dreams, my two favorite songs.
Okay.
Yeah, Better Days, I believe, is my philosophy
I
in
love
life,
it. It is
right?
great.
It is, yeah.
Quoted a lot. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when I had to do a business presentation in Manila, I quoted it, and that was my theme. My theme was as in your personal life and your business life, too many people keep going, well, when I get my promotion, then I'm going to be happy. When I find my spouse or when we have kids. And I said, you've got to enjoy the journey.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that last song is really strong.
And it brings the entire work together.
Yeah.
It's just, I haven't felt that way. I felt that way with Tunnel.
Yes.
I felt that way with Magic on some levels.
Yes.
And I mean, you go back to Born to Run, the 70s.
Sure, absolutely.
Listen, Darkness, they're iconic. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just talking about more recent Bruce. I was one of the people that I really liked the Lucky Touch collection.
Yeah.
A lot.
And I loved Western Stars, and it felt like a collection of, I've said this, Elmer Leonard or Zane Grey short stories, right?
Yeah.
And so I loved it kind of as a collection of stories. And
Mm-hmm.
I nothing but praise for Western Stars. But the more I listened to Letter to You, when you throw it, oh my goodness, he was 70 when he recorded this. The band together. I just picture the lights coming up and them going into Burning Train to kick off a show. And as we record this, he's going to play Saturday Night Live. We don't know what's going to be recorded, what he's going to do. I assume he's going to do at least, I know he'll do one song because he has an album to sell. I hope two. And there are so many great songs.
Yeah, there are. And it was kind of the first listen through, I felt like I knew it already.
Yes.
It was so familiar. And I felt that way about Tunnel. Like you asked my favorite songs, Brilliant Disguise.
Sure.
I easily would put in a top 5.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are more common to everybody and not as worth mentioning.
Besides putting, and I assume you are, you do you have a home room when you say you give your class? Is that you gave your class a name after?
4 different classes.
Okay.
6 that cycle through.
Okay.
Each of them. And the first one is the first period of the day is greetings. For
Okay. Oh,
obvious reasons.
perfect.
And I love it when students want to write out the whole thing. They could just put a G.
Yeah.
But they have to write greetings from Asbury Park, comma. They know I always do a comma. And certain album titles I've had to retire over the years because students begged me.
Yes.
So, like Darkness, I had to retire many, many years ago because they're like, we're your greatest class ever. You can't ever use this name. Born to Run. Can't use that one anymore.
So much like you can't, no one else can wear 7, right? The
Right.
Yankees, we're a class that, okay, I don't know if I'd have the courage to do that if I was a class, but I love the idea.
Well, I got one class, The Wild, the Innocent. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Great, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there anything else you do to incorporate Springsteen into your civics and American history? Do you do Born in the USA? Do you talk about some of the songs like for the history?
Well, I don't go past Reconstruction from a chronological perspective, but I'm always connecting the dots. And current events are very popular, but I always say, frequently, I shouldn't say always, I tell my students not to use hyperbole, frequently say that I could turn anything into a Bruce quotation and something just pops into my head, even in emails, just Bruce lyrics just pop in. No, when I taught the history of rock and roll class, for sure, I would, but other than students will bring it up. It was originally like my mother's a big Bruce fan, and ouch now hear about my grandmother, grandfather. Okay.
Well, what I find funny is I have worked probably my last 3 or 4 jobs. At least someone will say, Jesse, is there any situation where you can't come up with a Bruce story? Right. And I go, I don't think so. No, and
testament to Bruce.
Well, and I don't know if I've told the story on the podcast before, but I was working for a company, and a private equity firm bought into us. Okay. And so they were talking about that, their culture and how they're excited to take us and add us to their family, and the business, and the friend who had the private equity said, well, and I think what's missing is you guys don't have a ping pong table. He said, we have ping pong tables in our company. He says, and people take breaks playing ping pong. And sometimes when we're in the middle of a discussion and we can't come up with an answer, we'll take it to the ping pong table. So I go back, and Gavin is his name. And I go, hey, Gavin, I'm Jesse Jackson. Oh, nice to meet you, Gavin. I said, that's an interesting ping pong story. He goes, yeah. I said, well, Bruce says in his autobiography, Bruce Springsteen, I'm a huge Springsteen fan, about that once the band members were so busy playing ping pong that they went up on stage and they weren't all there. And so now then Bruce bans ping pong tables from backstage. And our CEO said, damn, you can find anything. It's like, absolutely. But I just thought it was an appropriate story to talk about that. So
the period before lunch, I let kids eat. Well, before COVID, now they're masks, but let them eat because it's 12 o'clock, and then somebody pulls out a turkey sub. I have to tell them before Bruce shows. I would drive to Sorrento's and Freehold because get a turkey and cheese sub because it was Bruce's favorite. Or if somebody, God forbid, has a Pop-Tart, you remember that part of the outdoor tour, the Born in the USA tour, like 85. When he made his Pop-Tarts reference. Yeah.
So that's funny.
Yeah.
Joni, what have I not asked you that I should have?
I don't know that I don't know that you have.
Okay. Good.
Maybe if there were a way to sum up the collective experience, is the gratitude that I have, not just for Bruce, I know it's a little hackneyed now after Springsteen and I came out years ago, and the last segment of that short piece is people saying, thank you, Bruce, from all over the world. So the gratitude I have for him. I used to send him a Christmas card, actually. So I guess I can add that, where I
Oh, that's
used Bruce
nice.
lyrics. I had my two girls sitting on the hood of a Dodge drinking warm, it was really apple cider.
Yes.
Um, in a soft summer rain, I sprayed the hose over the picture, or show a little faith, you know,
I love
that
you so much.
that kind of stuff. Or tonight, all is silence in the world. I thought it was a perfect Christmas sentiment.
Yes.
But yeah, I would send them to Bruce. Or my students love this story too. That I have one of my favorite road signs is in front of Bruce's house in Rumson. There's a sign that says "No U-turn" for
Mhm.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I got out of my car once and I stole a couple leaves off his tree, and I still have them. And the students think it's great because they think their teacher's a criminal. You know,
Right.
whoa, she's on that side of the law. She stole leaves from a tree that were going to fall and blow away anyway. At
You
some
are a rebel.
I am such a rebel.
Nice.
But anyway, the gratitude that I have for people like yourself, the
Mhm.
people, the closeness that I have with Jeff, who became my best friend 40 years ago in law school, and Bruce is what connected us.
Yes.
You know, my friend Brian and my friend Rob that I met because I interviewed them when they were aspiring lawyers, and I was part of
Mhm.
the hiring committee for my firm. And then Brian, I just talked to him yesterday. He works at the same gym as Bruce.
Mhm.
He sends me pictures of Bruce with Brian's kids, you know.
Yeah, that's funny.
He did tell me yesterday that Bruce has not been back to the gym. He's suspicious, talking to the trainer, Bruce's trainer, that
Mhm.
he's going to Bruce's house to train him.
Yeah, well, for COVID, you need
Sure.
to.
I'm
Yes.
glad to hear Bruce is staying out of the gym. We need him to stay
Yes, we
healthy.
do. We need him
Yeah.
to stay healthy. Absolutely.
But anyway, the gratitude that I have for just the community, that you can
Yes.
have a conversation as if you've known somebody your entire life because they have the same affliction. I call it, not an addiction.
Yeah.
For Bruce.
Yeah. I always say obsession slash passion. And it brings me joy and it makes me happy. It brings me happiness. And doing this podcast has been just a joy to me
Must be so
because
good for your soul.
it is. And, I have, um, and it's funny. I have shared this before. I was last year and a half ago, I guess now, we were going to go on a vacation and we wanted to make some extra money. So I was Ubering at night and I
Mhm.
picked up a couple at a concert. I don't remember what concert it was. And so I'm like, okay, any music you want to hear? Like, oh, we don't care, whatever you want. And I said, well, you know, I usually have it on E Street Radio. Oh, I love Bruce Springsteen. I said, really? She goes, oh yeah. I said, do you mind if I record you? Because I have a Bruce Springsteen. And so we talked for like 25 minutes
Oh,
all the way
awesome.
home, and just she was talking about how much she loved Bruce and the music and everything. And I said, okay, this is going to go on my podcast. Oh, great. And so I said it's everywhere. And um,
Do you sense a wide variation on the reasons why people love Bruce? Is it a wide net, or is it
yeah, I have certainly reached a point where we have second and third generation fans,
Mhm.
right? Like I remember, and I don't remember what this was about, but someone talked about you should um, sex education begins at the home, and you should your kids should not have to, like, when did mom and dad start talking about sex, is like, when did I figure mom and dad use Tide laundry powder? I just have always known that. And the thing is, like, I can't think of the day I first discovered Bruce because it was everything. I just has always been.
Mhm.
Um, the it is funny, you would think that Born in the USA is one of the big gateway albums, and it is, as is Born to Run, but a fair amount of Nebraska, and I have people that Magic was their gateway drug, that they found Magic and, like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so it is mostly the storytelling, the emotion, the his songs mean something. And I think, as you mentioned, there is a universal meaning to that. We've all had the feeling of us not getting along with our parents that Independence Day talks about.
Mhm.
It may not be specifically, it may be me and my mother, or a daughter and a father, but
But
we have
you
had that
picture, you
connection.
visualize dad
Yeah,
sitting at the kitchen table in the dark smoking a cigarette
yes,
when you come
yeah.
home late at night.
The I was visiting my home um, probably 6, 7 months ago, and I adore my mom, but she can get on my last nerves. And I got in the car, and I looked over to my wife. I said, um, "I'm tired of the kids, and I want to get in the car and never come back." Right? I misquote "Hungry Hard," and and who doesn't have that feeling sometimes, right? Like, I just want to get in the car and go away.
Went out
Uh,
for a ride.
yeah,
Yep.
and and so my son, who went to Oklahoma City, and that was his first show during the 2016 River Tour, and he went just because I want to go with my dad. He was
Yeah.
26, 27 maybe, and he's like, "This is just, it'll be a dad's trip." And so he goes, and he watches it, and we talk on the way home, and he had a lot of funny comments. He talked about, he said, "First off, Dad, you got to know what you're doing, because Bruce does not play. He finishes a song, then he goes 1, 2, 3, and he's right the next song. Like, if you don't have your blank together, you're lost, because there's no time to, okay, what was our next song?
But isn't
Let
that
me
one
get
of the
my
joys
music."
of Max?
Yes,
Is how he never takes his eyes off his boss.
yes, yes. And then and then he he went and saw a second show. We got lucky enough, we got tickets, we went to Jersey, we got to see, before your longest show, we got to see the second night of that
The
3 night,
Marlins.
yeah. So, which was at the time one of the longest shows,
Was
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Good for
and
you.
and he talked about, he says, "Dad, there is not a person in corporate America, from the CEO to the boardroom, that on Monday morning isn't already thinking about the weekend. And so out in the street, and when the foreman calls time, I've already got Friday on my mind." He said, that is a universal phrase, Dad, because everyone on Monday morning is already thinking about the weekend.
Right.
And so I think that universalness have done that. And then, I've talked about, when I'm pitching this show, I said, his music has got us through marriages and breakups and births and deaths and graduations, and
God bless.
yeah, and it is. And it's just in the beauty of that. And like, I remember when I drove to Nashville for that show, I was telling Linda, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go meet some people, Donna from Bruce Funds." And there were a bunch of people were all meeting, and I'm like, "I'm going to go." And she's like, "You're meeting people you don't know?" I'm like, "Yeah, but they're all Bruce fans." She's like, "But aren't you worried?" I said, "Okay, well, I believe they're all female, so shouldn't they be worried about me?" Like, Linda, if anything, right? I said, "And we're meeting at a restaurant, and you just talked about it, right? It's a friend I haven't met yet, right?" And we were, little Steven was here in Dallas for the Soulfire tour, and we were in the audience, we were in the kind of the waiting to get in, we're in the lobby, and Jeff and Nancy come up, and they had just been on the podcast, and we know each other through Twitter. And Jeff's like, "Hey, Jesse, is that you?" "Yes." And so Linda's talking to them, and when we sit down, Linda's like, how many times has she seen Bruce? I said, I think she mentioned 40, 50, I don't know, but they're so normal. I'm like, yes. She's like, I like them a lot. I'm like, yes, yes, they're. I said, just we, there's plenty of us that aren't all crazy. I said, like all fandom, 95% is great, 5% is a little weird. So yeah, I absolutely agree that this
Or
is
the person that tells you to sit down behind you because
yes,
you're
yes,
sitting at a show.
yes,
Well,
exactly.
during the Born USA, it's, obviously with its popularity rising, that
Yeah,
became more of a problem. I shouldn't call it a problem, more of an occurrence, because
yes.
it's not my expectation to ever sit during a
When
Bruce show.
so he Devils and Dust.
Uh-huh.
I
Oh,
he was
they
here.
shut the F up.
Yes, and he was in Grand Prairie. It's a little bitty
Uh-huh.
venue.
Hmm.
Um, and so I ended up getting the experience of I had a horrible seat. And a
Hmm.
guy came up and said,
You
"Do you
got
want
Men
to?"
in Black?
Yes. Do
Good
you
for
want a
you.
seat? Do you want a seat?
Good
And
for
at first I
you.
tell him no because I'm thinking it's a scalper. And then I realize, wait a minute, I'm in the venue. So I go in like, yes. Yeah. So I get like fourth or fifth row, a great seat.
Mhm.
And there's two couples that look college age, like just a row to the side, maybe ahead of me. And you could hear they had been drinking and like, when's he going to play?
Right.
Dancing
Oh,
in the
your
Dark.
hungry heart.
Yeah. And so the four of them ended up getting up and leaving because he was not,
Oh,
it's that
awesome.
show. Yeah. It just,
Great.
they didn't get it. They were there for the wrong reasons.
Great.
So yeah, that's
Especially
funny.
Devils and Dust. I mean,
Yeah.
I couple of times, I saw Bruce State Theater in New Brunswick. I guess it was 95. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Jode, opening night of the Jode tour. That and Devils and Dust, where people are shouting out they want to hear Rosalita. And it's,
Yeah.
you hear Bruce yell, shut the F up.
Yeah.
And you do.
Yeah.
He's the boss, and this is his art.
Yeah.
Do you have a bathroom song, as I characterize them?
So what's funny um, is Linda asked, that's my wife's name, okay, you've gone to 4 shows, this river show, it's the exact same set list for the first 2/3.
Yeah.
Are you bored? And I go, the songs I don't particularly like to
Mhm.
begin with, I still don't particularly like the ones I don't. Um, it's I have said that I am not a fan of some of the night songs, like Night.
Oh,
I know.
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Because the night. A couple of things like
Interesting.
that. Yeah. But of course, I I have a I have these songs of your life story that it's 11 questions.
Mhm,
What is the song you hate? What is the song you don't?
mhm,
You think is overrated? What is the song that made you fall in love with Bruce? What song? It's
mhm.
11 questions, and the song I hated or I think is over. No, the song I thought is overblown is Chunkaland, and people are like what?
Yeah,
And
that
so
is
I
surprising.
I always get crap about that, but my first true album was the Rising album. Like I had Born in the USA, I'd done the River, but my first show was the Rising, and that was so everything since the Rising are shows that those were my albums. I got them first. I
Yeah,
love them, and
yeah.
so versus I understand how Greetings and
Darkness.
Ness and all this are great, right? But I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily connect to them the way I'll Work for Your Love or Girls in Their Summer Clothes or
Oh,
or walking, like Linda, every time she goes on a hike, she in her mind, we've been walking on rocky ground. I mean, that is the soundtrack in her mind when she's hiking. So
oh, interesting.
yes,
You asked before about using my albums
yeah,
academically, and I did do. I forgot about the Rising album, obviously,
yeah,
in 2000, and I guess that would have been 4-ish.
yeah,
Using that album. when I did a 9/11 unit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I have kept you way too long. Before I let you go, though, I got to ask you the Mary question. So,
Uh,
Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher in the
okay.
Philadelphia area. And every year, his
Uh-huh.
seniors, they take 2 days out of the school year and they discuss Thunder Road as a poem. They go through all the lyrics. They talk about the imagery.
Mm-hmm.
He compares it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken,
Okay.
and discusses it. And at the end of the 2 days, his teacher, he asks the class, does Mary get in the car? So, Joni, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car?
I think my response, I might be an outlier, but I'm saying no.
About 40% of the people do.
Okay. I don't think Mary had enough faith.
Okay.
I think she liked dancing on her porch. I think she was enjoying her own experience, and dude saying, hey, get in the car, we're pulling out of this town, it's for losers. Well, she might have understood the comment. I don't think she's there. Mary stays.
I like that answer. Jay, that is Jay's answer. Jay, his theory is that um, the song is about choices, and it takes bravery to make that choice. And he thinks Mary isn't ready yet.
Right. That's
And so that's it. So no, that is not unusual. It is, like I said, it's about 60-40.
okay.
To be fair, most of my female guests think it's Bruce asking them in the car, so of course they say yes. Of course, it's Bruce Springsteen. You get in the car. So
I just want to ask you, being you ask this question all the time, that to confirm just a conclusion that I probably made erroneously, that I find that most men I ask, and when I ask the students, they say my dad's a fan, well, ask top song, it comes back Thunder Road. Do you find that there is a preponderance of men that pick Thunder Road as their top song?
A fair amount, yes. And I go back to my buddy Sam we were talking about, who's my Springsteen fan,
Right.
and my conservative buddy. We can be pretentious, and he and I always, and probably not fair, but when someone is doing Be the Boss on E Street Radio, we're like, why would you waste the slot on Thunder Road? Like, okay,
well,
yes.
I have to agree with that.
Okay, you get 5 choices.
Right.
Of course, Thunder Road. We all love Thunder Road. That's, we all love Born to Run. But you are getting your choice of why would you waste the slot? And it's funny, they have a similar thing on Jimmy Buffett Radio, right? Where you can pick the songs. And I'm like, no one will pick Margaritaville, and someone did, and I'm like, you were kidding. I can't understand. So yes, a lot of people, and that's why I was, and a fair amount of people backstreets too, mean a lot to that. It is not unusual.
Generalize women and their favorite songs.
No, I haven't too much. I mean, by far, I think Darkness would be the answer. Most people, when they talk about the album that means the most to them, I think they go back to Darkness. But then they say Born to Run.
Against that, even if it's not your personal favorite.
Yeah, and then they go, well, maybe Born to Run. You get a few people that really love the first 2 albums. There's something about that they love. And
stuff on them, build a circus. But one of my daughters recently asked me, like, the Desert Island, and I opted for Born to Run, even though if you ask me emotionally, I'm going to say Tunnel, Magic, and you know what? If you had to leave me with Letter to You, you just have to give me a box of tissues. But I'd be glad, because
and I had a guy say once that you have to go through, he said it, you have to have your heart broken a few times before you get Tunnel to Love. I don't necessarily agree you have to have your heart broken, but you've had to experience life to get Tunnel of Love. And Tunnel of Love would be on my list of albums that would be on my top list. There are things. And very early in the podcast, Joni, I had a question, and I don't remember who it was, but I said, look, I would be happy with a concert with Tunnel Love going forward. The set list was just made of those albums. And he said, that's funny. I would be Darkness and Back in a set list just of those. I would be happy.
Both of those are good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it just the idea, as I've talked to this a couple times, and Terry Smith, who does another podcast, said, Jesse, he says, I love Darkness, my favorite album, Born to Run. But if you think about Bruce having to build a set list starting, there's none of the slots for what you normally do. You're not going to get Badlands. You're not going to get Born to Run. You're not going to get, Dancing in the Dark.
Rosalita.
Yeah. So you think about what kind of set list would he build, starting with Tunnel, going all up, would make for a very fun show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I remember exactly where I was listening to Tunnel for the first time.
Okay.
That's on WNEW-FM. When Bruce sang the line, "Maybe Baby, the Gypsy lied."
Yeah.
And I went, whoa, he's getting divorced. Like, I knew at that moment. And then Jeff and I went to a show at Madison Square Garden, and with the binoculars could see that he wasn't wearing a wedding band. And that's when I knew that his first marriage was defunct. But you were talking about experiencing life.
Yeah.
That's just a moment that I could not at that time personally connect with, but was a real life experience. It wasn't just about cars.
Mm-hmm. A few years ago in Houston, someone had a sign request for One Step Up, and he pulled it, and he said, the sign said, not played by the full E Street Band since, I guess, whatever, like 99 or so. No, I guess this would have been, right, 86, 87 or something, and he said, we do not know this song. You have made your bed, sir. You can find it on YouTube, right? And he starts doing One Step Up, and he motions to Patty to do a few backgrounds, and you hear him say, band come in softly, and they do a version, and that was pretty special. That was a great moment, because you're like, wow, and
such a good song.
Yes, a great song, and to see that is wonderful. If someone wants to reach you, are you on any social media?
I am on Twitter.
Okay.
I follow you, actually.
Oh, thank you. Good. All right. What's your Twitter handle?
Bombers Boss.
Oh.
Bosses, you know what Bombers is?
Yes.
It's my little Let's Go Yankee. When I sometimes have to give like an email address with the word Bombers in it, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to think so badly of me. They don't understand. It's a Yankees thing.
No, of course. Like, I knew immediately what that, like Colleen has she's from Chicago, and her Twitter is all about Chicago sports. So yeah, absolutely. This has been wonderful. I hope you had fun, Joni. This was a blast.
Jeff was spot on. Not that I'd be surprised.
Yes.
That I really enjoyed your show with Sarah and Jeff, and even all of those stories. I was texting Jeff afterwards and called him, and I just said that you were such a great interviewer, because you relax the people who speak with you. You have such a conversational way. It's a living room chat.
Thank you. That means a lot to me, and that's the goal. So I appreciate that. And he was he's like, you've got to talk to my friend. You just got to. And so that's great. So good. Well, and
us together, and I can't ask for more than that.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. Listeners, you stay safe. Remember to social distance. Wash your hands. As the man says, wear an effing mask. Let's be good to each other, because we need to be. And we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
You better be good, for goodness sake.
Amen. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.